This is one of my all-time favorite movies. Second, I have to text someone. This is the kind of quality entertainment you get here. Trying to get my uncle to watch Prey. He needs to watch the movie Prey. Everyone knows he needs to watch the movie Prey. Okay, now that that's handled, I'll get back into the Highlander review, which is the point of this video. I love this movie. Everything about it. Everything about the whole idea of there being immortal warriors throughout time, to the fact that in the movie about the immortal Scottish warrior, Sean Connery not only plays a starring role in this movie, but plays a non Scottish person. That's right. That's a bold move. What kind of person does he play? He plays an Egyptian Spaniard who went to Japan. He's kind of the world, but yet he talks like he's from fucking Glasgow. You know, this is the way. The movie's great. The things about it that are bad or wrong make it better. Um, it's like the Bible. When you read the Bible, you can't criticize the Bible's story for, not being possible or not being whatever, because it's the fucking Bible. Like, that's the way people treated it. That's how you should look at Highlander. Like, that is the way it was, and that's the way it should always be. Like, I don't think, even if you remade this movie, they would butcher it. Like, it is magic. It's the Princess Bride. Okay, the Princess Bride did the same thing. They had like almost no budget in the 80s and decent writers and decent actors, and somehow they made this perfect thing. Highlander is a perfect thing. Whoever made it was a sword nerd. Let's start there. I mean, honestly, I think it was made by a sword nerd that's a woman that really wants to be swept off her feet by a Highlander or some shit. Like, this seems like a shitty romance novel, but they made an epic sci fi action thriller out of it. What the fuck? There's so much what the fuck with this movie. The passionate sex that is the early 80s. Like, you get sex like in Terminator, but full on, Highlander dicking down or whatever. Like, I like that in a movie. I think that's real. I think you should show it. I don't think it should be a porno or whatever, but like if they have a love scene, like the way Highlander or Terminator does it is considerably bit better than I don't know, pretending like nothing happened, you know? I don't understand the world. Like there's a whole lot of the world that has this Puritan streak that I don't understand at all. And it seems to be getting worse. Oh, you can't say the word fuck. Oh, it won't be acceptable in public if you say the word fuck. There's people's kids. You know what? There were people's kids in the 1700s too. And lots of people said fuck. Lots of people didn't say fuck. And, I think there's this maybe just clashing of worlds that people in general try to like create this little bubble to raise their children in that is like perfect. And honey, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't. And even if you think you succeed at it, you fail. How did we get to that from Highlander? I'm gonna circle back to Highlander. Oh yeah, the fucking sex in movies. Anyway, Jesus Christ, I'm fucking toasted. Did I mention that? I've killed about half of a cart of some pretty primo weed, and I haven't watched this movie in at least a couple of months or so. I watched it a while back. I didn't just watch it. I'm just gonna talk about things as they occur to me. This movie's probably gonna. This movie. That should tell you everything you need to know about this video. This video is probably gonna be an hour long. God damn, maybe two. Oh, I should probably stop smoking, but it's gonna be a better show if I don't. Um, so the Kurgan, I love the Kurgan. Like, you know, kind of a wrong way to be honest with you. Uh, the whole like, I didn't even know that the Kurgans were like were really an ancient people like until recently, but like they really are. Like, there's these people that lived on the steppes of Russia and had clubs made of bronze or copper. Like, God knows how long they were there. And I'm guessing that they had horses and dogs, more than likely. And at the point that you have a copper club and a horse and maybe a throwing spear or a bow, like, you're pretty legit as far as a warrior goes, especially back in the day. Like, they could have been doing that since forever. That's one of those cool things I think that should be pointed out about that movie. But in the movie, the Kurgan is the bad guy, and he's badass and awesome, and has a big broadsword that comes apart in multiple pieces, and he can piece it together. And he fucks a hooker. Your name was Candy or something like that. He goes, "Of course it is," something like that. Of course you are. I love Clancy Brown as the guy doing the fucking Kurgan, who I'm sure in real life probably has never heard a fly or something like that. But in this show, he was very intimidating. Sean Connery in the movie is called Ramirez, and Ramirez cuts the Kurgan's throat at one point, and then later the Kurgan and Highlander are having a discussion about this, and the Kurgan had raped what he had thought was Ramirez's wife, and Kurgan says, "I took his head and raped this woman before his blood ran cold." And like the Highlander realizes, oh shit, she got raped and she never told me. And in that moment, like they have this like eye to eye realization, and the Kurgan realizes that that was his woman. And like now the fight is on. Love this movie. Uh, the like nerdy sword bitch that's chasing Highlander dick throughout the movie. I just want to see the katana. Sure you do. Apparently, all 7 inches of it. I'm assuming he looks quite average. I think 7 might be a little generous, to be honest. This is gonna be a good video. We're not even 10 minutes in yet, and we're talking about the Highlander's penis. I think the wrestling match at the start is super interesting. It's like a it's like a time machine. You can't even see something like that anymore. All those people packed together, all watching those dudes fighting. Like maybe somewheres that post COVID has come back or something. But like even before COVID, that thing looked different than what they're doing now. And now we are far enough into the future that it is legit time traveling. It looks like you went to a fucking rock concert or something in the 80s, like at a dome or something. I guess really it looks like a wrestling match, but like I would never go to a wrestling match, so I have to envision it as something else. And I know you're thinking you wouldn't go to a wrestling match. You don't want to see hot, sweaty men throwing. No, it's not my thing. Like no. Like it if it was like a gladiatorial combat with swords and they were gonna kill each other, I'd watch that. Fake ass wrestling between steroided muscle men doesn't fucking interest me really. And that's kind of all I see there with all of those sports. Like I kind of respect the people that do it because of like how hard that is on your body to fake it that much. Anyway, the sword fight in the parking lot of Madison Square Garden was cool. And I like how throwing your sword into a light above the crime scene is enough to keep the NYPD from finding it. That's actually realism. That probably is true. 100% true. They would not find a katana if you threw it up high enough. Fucking pieces of shit. Oh, and like the depiction of the cops in this movie is fucking great. It's accurate, especially New York City at the time. I think it was very accurate, more than likely. And that's just my supposition based on my experiences with cops in the here and now. Probably not too far off. Maybe it's sensationalized. That's all the whole movie, right? And Sword Nerd works for the fucking police, which makes this interesting. Also, the whole thing of this movie is when one of these immortals, that's what they are, cuts one of the other one's heads off, lightning shoots out of his body and shoots into the body of the other one, and he like has an orgasm looking thing and shakes and quivers. And I don't know who thought of this, but it makes me smile. What the fuck? Okay. The quickening. Okay. Like there's lots of things in this movie that a lot of us are just like okay about because we saw this movie when we were 3. Okay? If we saw this movie when we were 30, we might have been like, so what now? Like there's so many of us that were born after 1980 that grew up watching this movie and thinking that that was just a normal thought to have, that you cut a man's head off and lightning shoots out into his body. That's not a normal thought to have. I don't know what the fuck that is. There's a significant amount of the people that I've talked to over the years about this movie, though, that I know don't think that that is an odd thing to have in a science fiction movie. And like now, after someone did it. Yeah. But this totally could have been like, well, Highlander 2, where we only watch it for its notable craziness and stupid shit and bad effects. Highlander 2 is one of the worst movies ever made. Highlander 1 is like Shakespeare. Sorry if you can hear that humming noise. That is my set power refrigerator that I've been testing. I decided just to pretty much be living out of it, see if I could, because I wanted to know if it would be big enough to live out of, and either living out of the van, touring around the country, or into the world kind of shit. Sorry about the noise. Um, there's other things in Highlander that are like that too. Like, I'm trying to think of some of the weird shit. There's funny weird shit in Highlander 2, but I'm not gonna get that into that. Highlander 2 is its own separate video. I'll give you one. Ramirez just shows back up. How do you get Sean Connery back for a sequel after he's been decapitated? Magic. Which, in reality, makes Highlander 2 one of the best movies ever made, because it is one of the worst movies ever to feature Sean Connery in it. For damn sure. Anyway, the guy he fights in Madison Square Garden is some sort of like faggy guy in like an 1800s costume with some Spanish sword, and you know, he loses. Oh, later the Kurgan kills some guy, and when he does it, there's a guy driving around who, well, he's like a cross between Never Enough Ammo, Duke, and my grandfather, and the Punisher, all kind of in one person. And he's like driving around New York City with a trunk full of guns, and is an ex-marine, and uh, is preparing for doomsday or some shit, and then sees fucking the Kurgan beheading a man in downtown New York City, and pulls over and pulls out like an Uzi and goes after the motherfucker. He gets impaled. That's a badass scene, though. Let's see what else. Oh, I love it when he meets with his friend in Central Park, just to have a drink or whatever, and they start like having flashbacks to the 1700s when they were drinking last and had a duel that the guy was fighting him with like a small sword that you stab with, and the only way these guys die is if their head gets cut off. So good luck with that. Best part of that is at the end of the duel, he like begs him, "Just stop. I'm sorry I called your wife a fat cow. I bid you good day, sir." After he stabbed him like 30 times or something like that. Oh, let's see. What else is good about this movie? The romance, I think, is actually kind of cute. It's kind of like horrible 1980s rapey romance, but I kind of like that. You know, everyone has their own tastes. Girl, pretty. It's a little more than that, but it is a little bit like a bad romance novel in parts of it, especially with the Queen soundtrack in the background. All The Queen soundtrack is great, don't get me wrong. It just adds into the bad love story, the bad love, not story, the bad love novel, bad romance novel aspect of it, because there's like Freddie Mercury singing about whatever in the background that is probably to do with fucking. Like, it's my favorite thing to inform people about this movie is that it was made by Dino De Laurentiis, who's the same guy that made Conan, the money guy behind Conan, and was the money guy behind that god awful. What is his name? Flash Gordon, a horrible Flash Gordon movie in the '80s. He did all three of those, and even with different people. Like Conan was Milius, and I don't remember who did Highlander, but I guarantee you, whoever made Highlander was talking to John Milius, just because of the association between those producers and whatever. Like, it's a small enough world. There's no way that he didn't. Especially John Milius had a reputation for writing all of Sean Connery's lines after, I think it was The Wind and the Lion. Something somewhere in there, somewhere between there and The Hunt for Red October, he just became the person that wrote all of Sean Connery's lines. So I almost guarantee you that he wrote some portion of The Highlander. Probably uncredited, because he was, working for the producer on other shit and was friends with Sean Connery. That is my supposition to you, and I would bet you anything that that's bang on the money. Because this movie smells of his influence. Like, honestly, it smells of something he wrote. I wonder if he wrote it or had anything to do with it. I'm going to Google this now while we're talking. Did John Milius write Highlander? I'm so high, I had to look at the screen to remember which movie it was we're reviewing. Pretty baked. It doesn't look like he had anything to do with it. I would bet you anything he wrote some portion of it. Like I said, if nothing else, the Sean Connery connection, but just everything about it, as it hits the same buttons that a lot of his movies do for us. You know, a lot of the other people that I've talked to that enjoyed Red Dawn or uh, Conan or both of those or other movies like these, Highlander's usually on a list of movies for them that they also liked. As one of those, I don't know what to attribute that to, but it's cool. Whether he had anything to do with it or not, because of its Scottish influence and because Sean Connery is in it, and it's great. Although its sequels usually suck, it's great. To quote Talladega Nights, it's like the greatest movie ever. It won the Oscar for greatest movie ever made ever. That's kind of how I feel about Highlander. Like I said, there's Conan and Red Dawn and Star Wars and a few other things, but Highlander. Indiana Jones too. Indiana Jones is a fucking good movie. The back half of the movie is not as good as the first half of the movie in my mind, because it's just the Highlander and Kurgan having a couple of sword fights and then a couple of fuck sessions with what's her face. I really like the early parts of him being in Scotland. I could just keep watching that part of the movie over and over for the scenery. That's one of the things about this movie is the scenery that they show you. at least in the Scotland portion, it's just amazing. They went and shot some shit that I guarantee you it doesn't look that way anymore. Like maybe it's still wild or whatever, but they like captured a moment where like in the 80s that portion of England looked particularly good for whatever reason. Wow, I'm fucking even higher. Jesus Christ. Um, in the movie Highlander, the the back half of it is interesting. When he cuts what's his fuck's head off, the Kurgan's head off. Uh, that whole montage with the ghosts and the headless body still trying to wield the sword, and that whole thing is very interesting. But it's not all of the world building that goes on in the first half of the movie. This is a complete journey, and in my opinion, the first half of it is the best because it usually is. And like I'm opposite of a lot of people. A lot of people be like, "No, no, I want to see the conclusion. I want to see the part where he gets his fucking head cut off." I'm more of a no. Let's fucking go hang out like at the start of it. I'm weird. Like the Fellowship of the Rings is my favorite movie of those three. And most people's, it's not. Kind of the same thing as like I like the Hangout movie. I like the Quentin Tarantino movies where you're hanging out with you know whoever it is that's in the movie and whatever it is that they're doing. And like whether it's Jules and Vincent blowing some dude's head off in the back of a car, or what's her face in Kill Bill. He's always hanging out with somebody. God damn. Ghetto bird flying over. You know, it's 10 o'clock on a Wednesday. Fucking Tulsa. Back to Highlander. The Queen soundtrack is really, really cool. Princes of the Universe is like the title track to that. And it's good. I like the whole soundtrack. I like that song in particular. Um, the other song that people always reference is the sappy romantic one, which I can't think of right now because I'm really baked. Um, Who Wants to Live Forever? I should look at my phone. That is a good song, but it's the bad romance novel elements of Highlander, and like in reality, whoever wrote that movie did a lot of people's wives a favor because like somewhere deep down in their reptile brains there's like this horrible romance novel idea of what it is to be in a relationship that basically just means that they are pussy whipped for life, more than likely. I probably just hurt some people's feelings, but that's true. You know, it's okay. It's okay to be a very good husband. I will say that like seems like some people's bitches are just out of control. Whether that's the men or the women. World's gone crazy. Well, that's kind of about all I really had to say about Highlander, and now I'm kind of high as fuck. I would like to talk about the swords. Um, the only ones I really care a fuck about in this movie were the katanas. Like the Kurgan's takedown broadsword is fucking cool too. Don't get me wrong. A couple other swords shown are even cool, just as of themselves. But the hero sword of the movie is, Ramirez's katanas that what's his face? The Highlander, Connor McLeod and McLeod, or whatever the fuck his name is. He wields throughout the movie. I honestly, it took me a long time to get over being a katana wanker. As what's his face? Mm, can't think of his name right now. He has a sword channel on YouTube. He's from England. Anyway, that's what he calls people. I was in a phase for years where that was the sword. I didn't even look at other shit. Didn't even think about other shit. And I think this is kind of where a lot of people end up is in this katana wanker crowd. And that's, no offense. I just think there are other swords in existence, and the katana isn't even the best sword to decapitate someone with, much less the best sword to have in modern combat, I don't think. I think the Wakizashi is pretty good because it's, a smaller katana and like you can carry it on you and shit like that. That makes more sense. Just not a big katana fan. And, as such, watching this movie is kind of like a bittersweet thing because, like, yeah, the swords are cool or whatever, but it's not one that I'm lusting to go get. And mainly it's because I've had them. And my opinion on katana are basically that they're made for a style of combat that I will never do, that my opponents will never do. And is it effective against other styles? It can be. Is it the most effective style? No. Okay. And like we could get into the what fors and whys of that, but no. There's all of this like crazy mysticism in America about the Japanese. Especially when it comes to swords and knives. Like, you know, even before electronics from Japan were respected, fucking pocket knives and shit were like the first thing that were respected from there because they had a reputation of blade making that goes way the fuck back. And they lived off of that to some extent early on in their knife making shit in the 50s after World War II. They produced some knives that were really good. They produced some knives that were crap. Eventually they get there. Anywho, um, I think this movie contributed to that katana wanker crowd quite a bit. Like crazy amount. Just a second. And especially because like this is a white guy using a fucking sword or whatever, and the sword that he's using happens to be Asian. And That's all a lot of the people that are not Japanese that you see wanting a katana. It comes from one of a few places, and one of the earliest places is Highlander. Some of the other places of that is like the samurai were a known thing. Okay, samurai history and culture and whatever was a thing even outside of Japan. Not as big as it is now, for sure, but it was a thing. So there's always been like the martial arts crowd, I guess, of katanas that yeah, I wouldn't even consider them into this really. They are at this point practicing. It's not about how they practice. The way that they practice and the amount that these guys practice make them very, very good. It's I question the validity of what they are practicing in a modern context. Now, if you want to be like, oh, it's kendo and it's for sport or whatever, okay. Same with fencing. But I'm actually interested in some of these weapons from a possible use in a modern conflict. And the reason is, well, zombie weapons. What if the world ends to the point that there is no more ammunition and eventually your guns are fucking useless? I think that's worthy of consideration. And like, I think it's cool to have this sort of an interest. I don't know what else to call it. Like, I'm interested in fencing and whatever. Also, I've done those things. I have no interest in fucking learning Japanese swordsmanship, to be honest, after playing around with it a little bit. That's, again, no offense to them, full respect to them. All of the swords that I would use right now are not the katana. And yeah, I just don't think that most of their two-handed sword shit is going to have a whole lot to do with all of the one-handed swords that I like to use. Maybe that's an incorrect way to view it or whatever, but like, that's any martial art. I'm more hip to the Kurgan's sword than this, to be honest. I think that's pretty dope. I think the takedown part makes it suck. I would never use a takedown sword. And again, like I said, a lot of the swords in this are two-handed. And that makes sense to some extent in this movie. If you're going to be like, the only way to kill an opponent is to take his head off, well, then, the swords become considerably different. And I don't know why you would choose a katana. Like, I guess because it can cleave a man's head off because it's so sharp. Hate to tell you this, but most swords can do that. Okay? And as far as it having two hands, that a lot of swords can have two hands. I don't understand the katana. The giant fucking broadsword makes sense to some extent. It's a little even out of place, really. Like, if in reality, the Kurgan, I think, would probably be using a Viking sword. Probably a single edged one, be my guess. That's what I would use if I were him. The reason I say that is if he is the Kurgan, those people were originally using bronze clubs or copper clubs, right? One handed. The eventual evolution of that is kind of the short sword, the gladius kind of thing. The Viking sword, or ultimate evolution of it, especially in its one sided version, I think would be good for cutting off heads. And it kind of fits his style and where he's from a lot more than the giant medieval sword that is really just a bunch of show or whatever. And then there's Connor McLeod, like There's a bunch of swords you could have him have. Uh, Honestly, I think they picked the one that made the best movies. I don't know what sword I would give Connor McLeod. The tempting thing to say is English, Scottish from the era that he was in, right? The McLeod sword that he had. I don't think that's right. I don't know what he would end up with. I'm gonna put some thought into that and come back and do a separate video on I with a sword that I think the Highlander should have had. I'll put a lot of thought into that. The Toledo, whatever the fuck that was, some Spanish broadsword. Toledo Salamanca. I'm not talking shit about that sword, but I don't think I've ever heard about it outside of that movie. I know swords from Toledo are famous. Maybe I just don't know enough about that kind of a sword to be impressed with whatever that is. And for the most part, the swords that I'm interested in are what is available today that is combat ready that is at an affordable price. If it's at an exorbitant price, it better be goddamn good. To be honest, for a sword in the modern day, I consider $200 to be a pretty exorbitant price. That's what I paid for the cold steel scimitar that I bought, and I feel that that sword is good for the money. But that's because that's the exact kind of sword that I'm looking for. Um, I wouldn't want to spend more than a couple $100 on a sword these days. I think you'll be able to find something in that range. And if you're going to go higher than that, I would. hmm, I don't know where I would spend my money or how. Maybe I should do videos on that. But the thing I would definitely look for is better steels. Anything made in better steels and made in America or England. I think I am going to get another sword before all is said and done. I want a Todd's Workshop Scottish Dirk. I will get one of those. It's one of those like I need one for the collection, and I guess at some point I'm gonna need a katana or a wakizashi. Maybe I should get a set of samurai swords. I don't know. I should put that on my list of fucking things to quest after. I have like a list of shit going on my fridge of stuff to save money for. And my goal is right now to finish out my pocket knife collection a little bit and then just start squirreling away cash to buy land. I might take off a few things off my list before I buy land. But right now my list includes night vision, land, um, deer rifle, hunting shotgun, fucking $700 pocket knife because you know I think I'll have to add. Fuck, what was it I was saying I was gonna add? God damn it. Well, I'll have to go back and watch this now. um, The Scottish Dirk, I'd be like, oh yeah, I need to add that to the list, but it's only like $150, something like that, $170. That's too cheap to be on the save up list. Anything less than $300 or so, and I'll just buy it. If it's more than $300, I save up for it. I really can't remember what the fuck it was I was saying I was going to save up for. That's why you shouldn't smoke weed, kids. It's a good thing I'm recording this. Ah, set of samurai swords. That's what it was. That's why you should smoke weed. It'll remind you. Thanks, weed. My thing with getting a set of samurai swords is like, that's just a waste of money. Most people would be like, a $700 pocket knife is a waste of money. True, so is, a $200 sword, a lot of other shit. To some extent, half of the reason that I'm saving up all of this kind of shit that I can right now is because some of this is produced. Sorry, coughing. Some of this is produced in China and India. Some of this, like the Leathermans, isn't, but it's just produced in general, and the cost of that shit's going to be going up. And like, this is stuff that I can think to buy now that I definitely want, to have, that is going to be going up in price because it's a known quantity. Like, Leatherman does make money making these, but like, I guarantee you, when it's all said and done, like, there is a large percentage of profit on the tool, but on the company itself, there's a lot of people they got to pay, and as a result, Leathermans are going to still be around and still be purchased by people that need to do things. They're not going anywhere but up. And especially if I can score stuff like these stainless rebars for 40-ish, I'm going to score a few more of those and buy the blackened one that I really want and just have multi-tools covered in all of my systems for the rest of my life. And this is kind of the way I'm viewing everything now. And that's why people think, oh, you're spending stupid money. No, I'm spending money on fucking steel. That's what I'm doing. And it's fun. And it's stuff that I need anyway. I have a whole laundry list of shit that I need to buy. Oh, God. That's like the reality of the situation, I think, for most people right now is the amount of things that you need to be self-sufficient is probably not small. I am almost to the point where the only thing I need is land and building materials. Really, I need money to get both of those. And I don't know how I'm going to save money. I don't trust the dollar. I was hoping that they would have pulled their bullshit by now and reset things, and I would have known more about how I would be saving money best. I don't know. I don't think silver and gold are all that safe, to be honest. They seem to really manipulate those markets. When all else fails, my trust goes into the things that I know that I can trade or barter for goods. So to me, stashing away a whole bunch of Leatherman rebars that are the multi-tool that I like, that I want to put in kits, that makes sense. And as far as like the weapons collection, Well, I pretty much concluded that I wasn't going to have a gigantic collection of guns because it's just too much. So I have a pretty big collection of guns, and next to or with it is the melee weapons collection that is growing. And I'm not going to go too hog wild on that, but I will continue to add to that for sure. I don't see the reason to continue to buy guns. I have more than I can shoot, and I have enough to arm people that I would need to arm. Maybe I'll feel differently at some point, but it's one of those things like how many AR-15s can you shoot at a time? I have two, and a 9mm PDW, and a 22 caliber PDW, and three handguns, and a single shot shotgun, and I'm planning on getting another shotgun and a deer rifle. Like that's plenty. But as far as the swords go, you know, the movie Highlander is the reason why I want a gigantic room of swords. And like I told you, this was going to be long, and I'd go in circles, and I'm high. I'm back again, and the reason the reason that I'm talking about all this bullshit is because the room that I want to have as my hangout room, smoke room, armory. Where the fuck do you think I got the idea for that, bitches? Like his armory in Highlander is so goddamn cool. Like my room that I'm wanting to make that is gonna be like an underground bunker hangout room smoke shack kind of thing. Um, I want to be a mix between his armory and Highlander and like Sherlock Holmes uh, office. I don't know what to call that. What do you call that? Whatever it is, the place Sherlock Holmes hung out. Some sort of mix between those two. It's like a drawing room slash armory. I have a cold. I'm sorry. That movie is so cool. And like I know I shouldn't love all these old melee weapons and shit, but as a result of this movie and a few other movies when I was a kid, I really do. I like swords far more than I like guns. I always have. And it's not like guns aren't cool or whatever. I own many. I've owned many. They're very awesome. I even own a gun that has a blade that attaches to it, which is even more awesomer. The bayonet was one of the best inventions ever. Specifically the socket bayonet allow you to still shoot while stabbing people. Just that's some greatness right there. There's been a few weapons over the years that have just taken over, and the musket with a bayonet back in the day took over. Like it made it to where with a gun like that inside of 25 yards, it's a shotgun. It's a shotgun shooting a big pumpkin ball. You're gonna be dead. It's not that hard to aim the thing. That's the thing people don't understand, I guess. And like eventually, I'd like to have some of that kind of shit to add in here too. Like currently, my shit is kind of going from a black powder revolver to like melee weapons, and I'd like to fill in some of that gap. Have some different eras of melee weapons, maybe, and maybe add a couple of different percussion guns. And in particular, I'd like to get a flintlock pistol, and I'd like to get probably a percussion single shot pistol of some sort. I've seen a couple of those that interested me. There's a cheap Pedersoli screw barrel one in particular that I'm got my eye on. But aside from that kind of shit, I think it'd be really cool to make a hand cannon. I used to have a brown bess musket. I shouldn't have sold that, but it didn't have a bayonet with it, and it was problematic. I think it was an Indian one. But it's like that kind of shit that like I'd like to have some fill in of that kind of stuff. And my deer rifle, I've decided I'm going to get a military surplus rifle. I'm probably going to get a British SMLE. There's plenty of them around. I'll hunt and find one. I like that rifle, and it's what I want in a deer rifle. I want to get one of those. If I see something else in the meantime that's a military surplus bolt action that I know shoots to point of aim, we might talk. And that would basically the only thing that would get preference over the SMLE would be like an American gun, and particularly the Eddystone, the 1917 Enfield. I kind of like that gun. I would get one of those, or I would get a 1903 A3 with the M1 Grand style sights on it. We're talking money for those, though. We're probably talking money for an Enfield at this point, but like, I'm probably gonna get something in that vein. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see me carrying around a 1903. The more I think about it, it's a good gun, especially with the peep sights. I'm gonna have to see. I'm gonna somewhat leave this up to luck of the draw because I'm just gonna go to a gun show with a pocket full of money at some point and be like, "What's $400?" Unless I decide to save up more money and get yeah, a really nice 1903 or something like that. But my idea is to kind of fill in some of the armory, I guess. Like my pistols kind of already span the eras. My rifles are all ARs because that's what they are. But my one of my ARs is very Vietnam heavy. I don't know. I think it's a cool thing, and a lot of it came from this movie. So I guess that explains the back half of this. Because like my thing is, what would you do if you won the prize? Like my answer would be build that fucking armory. Yes, maybe have like a bed in the middle of the armory where you can fuck your hot bitches. Apparently, since that's the other theme of this movie is just banging bitches in the armory. I want a sign on the door that says there will be no sex in the armory. So that's a different room. I'm sorry that the guns make you horny. My ex, she liked guns. I don't think they made her horny necessarily, but she would totally have been down to fucking an armory. Let's put it that way. I miss that bitch. Well, I think I'm going to end this here. This has been an hour of this. This wasn't really a review of Highlander so much as it was me getting really high and talking about Highlander and weapons for an hour. But I hope someone enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this and would like to see more, I don't know how I do a sequel to this. Well, actually, I do know how I do a sequel to this. I get as high some night and talk about Highlander 2. But honestly, I'd have to watch that movie a fuck ton to get an hour out of that. Like, this stopped being about Highlander 30 minutes ago. Started being about weapons. 'Cause weapons are cool. Also, I happen to be in a room surrounded by weapons. And the cat and I are very, very high. He's sitting here with me and like he's cracking me up because he's toasted too. And he's been toasted for a day or two with me now. Poor little bugger. He likes being high. This new weed is good. Tell me in the comments, what sword would you use in Highlander and why? Make this interesting. See who showed up till the end. See who can follow their homework or whatever. See you guys later.